Welcome to the START podcast, Somatic Tools for Alignment, Regulation, and Transformation. I'm your host, Jessa Hooley. This episode is recorded as part of START, a free somatic healing program for people with painful childhoods. Join START to get access to this podcast along with exclusive monthly on-demand classes led by me, a somatic trauma specialist. If you're ready to create a life of calm, confidence, and belonging, join START by visiting alwaysvibin.com or search Vibin Wellness in your Apple or Google Play App Store. That's alwaysvibin.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is finally February. Oh my gosh, after 750 days of January, we made it to a new month, and this month we have a new theme. The new theme for the START program is using pleasure as medicine. Ooh, so juicy. I cannot wait to share all this content and the classes for this month's theme. Before we go any further, we're talking about trauma in this podcast, which means that some of the topics that are discussed might bring to the surface some of your own traumatic imprints. If that happens and anything in this episode brings up a sensation that you don't feel like you want to be present with, I fully invite you to pause. Take a break, look around, get yourself a drink of water, and just come back when you feel like you're ready to. With that being said, pleasure is such an exciting subject for me to talk about. It really, it invigorates me because it is such an accessible practice for everyone. Now, even me saying that might be triggering for you as someone who maybe has a really challenging time accessing pleasure, but pleasure is a birthright within us. And it is so healing. We all have access to it, even if it's been really suppressed, really dormant, shrouded in a bunch of cultural jargon and expectations and baggage and things like that. So we're going to talk about why that is, how we access it, why it's even important. When I'm speaking to you as a somatic trauma specialist specializing in childhood or developmental trauma, why am I even bringing up pleasure? That's really the focus of today. So let's just start there. Why don't you pause for a second? Take a moment. Take a breath. If it feels right, you can close your eyes, but that's not necessary. And I want you to think or feel into what comes to mind, what comes within your body when I say healing practices. When you visualize yourself engaging in healing practices, what arises to the surface? Try not to think too much about this. You can think of this as like the answer is like a bubble underwater just floating to the top. So I'm just going to give you a minute. What does a healing practice look like for you? Where are you? What are you doing? Is it easy or challenging? And when you feel like you've connected with that, taking another deep breath, opening those eyes if they're closed and looking around your space, reorienting yourself back to where you are, when you are, and with me in this podcast. Now, I bring that up because oftentimes when we're thinking, especially in today's culture of really go hard, no pain, no gain, you get out of it what you put into it, these sentiments carry a lot of energy with them. There's a lot of this is supposed to hurt for you to heal. So it wouldn't surprise me if many of you, when you're thinking of healing practices, you were thinking of things that are very effortful, like breath work, a yoga class, crying. Maybe you visualize yourself doing some deep inner work and crying. In addition, healing is also connected with the idea that this is something we don't want to do. These are things that we have to do. These come from sentiments like, it may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. Once again, none of these sentiments or expressions are inherently wrong. They have their own value. But what I'm getting at is that there's also this other viewpoint of healing, that this is something that I have to interact with so that I can go do the things that I want to do in my life. So that might look like maybe you visualize yourself in talk therapy. Maybe you visualize yourself meditating. And it wouldn't surprise me if very few of you actually visualized yourself doing something sincerely, deeply, truly pleasurable. What does that feel like? And that's not surprising to me, because pleasure has been very broadly divorced from the concept of healing. We don't even consider pleasure in most circles as a need. It is it is the ice cream after your dinner. It's the frosting on top of the cake. It's something that, ooh, wouldn't it be nice to have pleasure in this life? Yeah, it would be nice if I could only be so lucky. And some of us don't even feel like that opportunity has been available to us. We've lived in such challenging circumstances for so long that pleasure doesn't even feel like a, a part of existence as a person. It is something that only the privileged have access to. And while I honor, respect, believe people with experiences where pleasure feels completely impossible, pleasure is your birthright. You have access to pleasure built into your nervous system because it is actually a built-in function. To understand the need and the benefit of pleasure, we have to begin with the nervous system. So let's start by taking a really simplified view of the nervous system so that you know where we're headed here. Your body is made with a nervous system. A lot of the talk about nervous system out there right now feels like it's kind of this mystical entity that lives inside of you, but it is actually real bundles of nerves that move through your body and electrical signals that are sending information up to the brainstem into the brain and back down into the body. It's a real thing that you can look at on an anatomy table. Our nervous system helps us interpret our experience at every single level, from the experiences we feel inside of ourselves, from what we can understand outside of ourselves, what we can sense outside of ourselves, and our relationship to what is within us and outside of us, meaning what is triggering me? What is giving me a sense of safety right now? What is making me feel these emotions? And so much of our nervous systems, the majority of our nervous system, I would dare say, is a subconscious experience. Pleasure interacts directly with the nervous system. When we're talking about the nervous system, it's it was built on an evolutionary scale. You can think of our nervous system along with our brains as having functions that were created longer ago than others. So we started, let's look at my notes here, about 500 million years ago. That's the oldest part of the nervous system. This is what I call the brake, also called the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system. This is the part of your nervous system that slows things down. That's why going forward, I'm going to call this the brake. The brake, okay? Sometimes this is called rest and digest, which rest and digest does happen in the brake, in the parasympathetic nervous system. But so does freeze, so does shut down, so does dissociation. See how all of these things, whether you're resting, whether you're digesting, whether you're frozen, all of them are slowing things down. It's pushing on the brake. Now, the part of the nervous system that evolved after, this is about 400 million years ago, is what I call the gas, or the sympathetic nervous system. This is the one, a lot of people call this your fight or flight nervous system. And once again, fight or flight can happen. It does happen in the sympathetic nervous system, in the gas, but that's not the only thing that happens there. This is where your energy comes from. When you're getting shit done, when you're laughing with a friend, when you're dancing, when you are using energy, you are pushing on the gas, your sympathetic energy. And the youngest part of our nervous system is called the ventral vagal. I'm going to be referring to this as the driver. So we have the brake, parasympathetic, the gas, sympathetic energy, and the driver, ventral vagal. Once again, we're keeping this super high level, okay? Don't worry about getting into the weeds. There's a lot to polyvagal theory. This is what you need to know for this particular episode. Now, the ventral vagal is only 200 million years old, and this is what we call the social connection space. This is where we know how to interact with people. We can persuade people. We can connect with people. It's where presence lives, because in presence is relationship. Think about any time you feel connected to a person or a thing. Doesn't necessarily have to be another person when we say connection. When you're really, let's see, you go sightseeing and you're standing at the edge of a canyon and you have that sense of, you are fully connected to what you are seeing, where you are, connection. The driver, I call this the driver because our ventral vagal, our connection space, this is the part of us, the part of our nervous system that is really, really good at appropriately pushing on the gas when it's time to push on the gas and pushing on the brake when it's time to put on the brake, because this is the part of us that is connected to what's happening right here, right now. This is the part of us that has the most awareness. So we want it in the driver's seat. Quick recap, we've got our brake, we've got our gas, we've got our driver. Now, what the hell does this have to do with pleasure? Let me tell you, pleasure is available in all three parts of the nervous system as long as our driver is behind the wheel. So let's talk about the brake. Where is pleasure available with the brakes on? In the parasympathetic spot. First, I'm thinking of soaking in the warmth of the sun. Maybe me just saying that, you kind of like sit back into your body. That is a breaking experience. I'm relaxed, I'm soft, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm connected. There's the driver, the connection. I feel the warmth on my skin. I feel the grass on my back. I can sense what parts of me are getting warmer and getting cooler, and I feel a lightness. I'm fully present to this moment. How about cuddling with a pet or a loved one? You're just collapsed into that little fluffy animal critter, my Jocko, miniature schnauzer that I have here, and you're feeling the fur on their back and you can hear their breath. This is where you're like, oh my God, babe, you see how he's holding me, he's snuggling into my, oh, yeah, it's because you're fully here. You are not missing one little moment with this little creature of yours. Or this could be a time when you're snuggling with a loved one and this is your partner, and it's one of those rare moments where you're like, I love you so much. Do you feel that presence? And also, do you feel the slowness, the break? That's parasympathetic energy paired with connection. So we have the brakes, the driver is putting on the brakes. A key part that is going to come up over and over again in the series is how connection needs to be present for pleasure. Feel into the difference of what it is like to be cuddling with your pet, like I just said, fully immersed in a pleasurable connection versus dissociated on the couch, numb, completely collapsed. You're both laying on the couch. One feels pleasurable, one feels terrible. Same with laying in the sun. In all three of these situations, the body has slowed down, but one does not have connection and the others do. One feels heavy and difficult and challenging. That's a full brake stop. There's no control on that brake. It's all the way there. There's no driver. The other, the brake is being used by a skilled driver. Someone who's aware, that ventral vagal connection. Let's move into the sympathetic branch. This is the energy. Remember the gas. This is where we press the gas. Pleasure can be with energy too. Think of the last time you had a really good laugh. Something absolutely ridiculous happened to your friend, and you are clenching your sides. Your face hurts. You've been laughing so hard at what happened. You're both laughing together. The story, you feel the humor in your body. It's making you feel bubbly and light and explosive. You're surprised by how your body is moving to the hilarity of the situation because you're so connected to the humor, to that sense of safety, that you are just bubbling with energy, sympathetic energy. And notice how that experience would be different from feeling really on edge or nervous about something. Both are mobilizing energy. In both situations, your heart is pounding. In both situations, you feel that kind of explosiveness where it's like, oh, there's just so much of me. That's the energy, right? But the laughter is paired with the connection. You are here with yourself. You are here with the person. When we're talking about connection, remember, connecting to sensation in your body, to that gas. You are connected to the gas pedal. How much is being pushed down and why it's going there. You feel it move through you. The other, the nerves, the jittery bubbliness, you're likely fighting that energy, trying to suppress it, trying to numb it. You don't want to be with that. That's not pleasurable for you. The gas is pedal to the metal. There's not a skilled driver to be pushing just enough for what we need to stay connected. And then obviously, pleasure lives very happily when ventral vagal, or the driver, is the primary experience. So the real critical part of pleasure is that the driver is behind the wheel. A skilled driver is behind the wheel of our emotional bus here. Think of how scary it can be to be in the vehicle with someone who is reckless on the road, pedal to the metal, always zooming in and out. There is only the gas, and there's this great risk of danger with driving that way. Equally so, if you've been in the vehicle with someone who is always driving under the speed limit, you want to shove your face through the freaking windshield. That is a miserable experience as well. That's all brake. When we're engaging with pleasure, we are driving in the car with a skilled driver that knows when to push the gas, how far to push the gas, when to push the brake, how far to push the brake, so that we go on a smooth ride. The problem is when we grow up in a household that is painful, that is threatening, that lacks our needs, when our nervous systems are always under threat, we are not given the opportunity to let the driver sit behind the wheel. It is all gas or it is all brake. So a nervous system built on slamming the gas and slamming the brake persists in being a nervous system that functions that way into adulthood, unless we give it the opportunity to experience having a skilled driver behind the wheel. And that's what pleasure does. Pleasure requires the driver behind the wheel. And this is why pleasure can feel really unsafe for a lot of people. It's because you're asking a driver to take full-time position behind the wheel when it hasn't had any practice doing so. Pleasure gives the driver practice. We're saying, hey, social connection, driver, come sit behind the wheel for a little bit while I engage with this pleasure. Great. Now you can come out. It's all right. Survival energy, you need to come back in. Freeze energy, you need to put on the brakes a bit. Fine, that's fine. Totally fine. Then we practice again. Bring pleasure back in. Driver back behind the wheel. We're giving that driver the hours clocked in until your whole body feels confident that the driver will be capable of taking charge in a way that's safe. So that the parts of ourselves that feel really anxious about being connected, because up until this point, the only way to stay safe was to either slam the gas or slam the brake. We practice with pleasure. So the breakdown. Pleasure is a completely embodied experience. It can be high energy, it can be low energy, but it is always connected. The part of us that lives in connection is the part of us most capable of pushing the brake and the gas in a way that is comfortable and balanced and safe. That's the driver. And pleasure always puts the driver in the driver's seat. So every time we practice pleasure, we are giving the driver a chance to get comfy in that chair. And over time, driver's just going to stay put. And we're going to feel more ease in our lives. Outside of the times that we're practicing pleasure, this is my pitch for our nervous system approach to pleasure. And when we're working with trauma, we are working with the nervous system. A healthy, regulated, balanced nervous system that has the driver behind the wheel is one that feels good to live in. So why not? Why not have a practice that is pleasurable that brings us healing? Thanks for listening. To get the most from this podcast episode, visit alwaysvibin.com to join the free START program, or search Vibin Wellness in your Apple or Google Play App Store. The information in this episode is not intended to diagnose or treat any condition. Please contact your mental health practitioner or a medical doctor for advice specific to your needs.